When I originally uploaded this video in 2020, it got dislike bombed and received a lot of angry comments. And now, if you're angry that I made a video going over the Japanese translations of the slogan Black Lives Matter, and if you haven't already clicked away from this video, consider this little logical exercise. If I say, I love cake, does that mean I hate pie? No, it doesn't mean that. By saying, I love cake, I'm bringing attention to the fact that I love cake. Maybe I feel the need to say I love cake because people think I don't love cake, or people have been hating on cake a lot and I want to give it some love. I love all desserts. All desserts matter, but that doesn't mean if I say I love cake that I don't love other desserts too. If I say Black Lives Matter, I am not saying that the lives of non-Black people don't matter. I think the slogan rubs some people the wrong way because this is the impression they get from it. The slogan and the movement are meant to bring awareness, social change, and legislation to protect Black lives from police brutality. It is not meant to ignore or erase white lives, Asian lives, Indigenous lives, or any other non-Black lives. A slogan is meant to be short and catchy, something you can chant at a protest or print on signs or t-shirts, and as such, it's difficult to distill a nuanced idea into a slogan. And as a linguist, I'm fascinated by how slogans are translated, so I made this video to take a deep dive into the linguistics of the slogan and how it's translated, not to virtue signal. Also, if it wasn't already painfully obvious, I am socially progressive, so racial justice is an issue I and a lot of my followers care about. So me making a video like this is not entirely out of left field. I couldn't resist. And before you accuse me of ruining Japan by pushing my woke agenda on them, the translations of Black Lives Matter covered in this video are by Japanese people, not me. Newsflash, there are Black people in Japan. There are socially progressive people in Japan. Japan is not a monolithic conservative ethno-state. Anyway, the people who are mad about this video just from the title have already left by now, so let's get to the linguistics of the slogan Black Lives Matter. So the slogan Black Lives Matter has been pretty highly debated in the public discourse. What does it actually mean? What do people think it means? This video is not so much about that in English language speaking discourse, but it is about that in the Japanese language discourse of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I follow a few Japanese people on Twitter, and so the hashtag in Japanese has come up a few times on my timeline. And one of the more recent translations that I saw of it was Kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu. And so I kind of thought that that was just the generally agreed upon translation of the phrase, but I did a little digging just on Japanese Wikipedia and found that there's actually a much longer, more complicated history to their translation of the slogan, and that they still haven't quite agreed on a unified translation of it. So I'm going to go over all of the possible Japanese translations of Black Lives Matter and all of the different nuances that go with each translation. So to show you the evolution of the phrase, how it was translated in Japanese discourse, I'm just going to read you my translation of this Wikipedia article from Japanese Wikipedia. So, when the murder of a Black man by a white cop in May 2020 in Minnesota resulted in the spread of worldwide protests, criticisms and objections arose from the slogan Black Lives Matter being translated for the first time as Kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu da in HuffPost Japan. So I'm going to explain the nuances behind Kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu da. Kokujin is Black people, literally. The kanji, if you look at the kanji, koku is Black, jin is person or people. So Black people. No is the possessive particle, so it's like adding an apostrophe s, Black people's. Inochi is life or lives, so the lives of Black people, or Black lives, that's pretty much literally verbatim the first part of the slogan in English. So far, the same. And then we have this particle mo, which we're going to get back to in a minute, and then taisetsu. So the da at the end is just the plain speech version of desu, which is just how they end their sentences, so it doesn't particularly mean anything. The taisetsu, it is an adjective which means important or precious. In our slogan, Black Lives Matter, the matter is a verb, to matter, basically. The Black lives are the subject, they are the thing that is mattering, they are performing the verb of mattering. But the verb to matter, Japanese language doesn't really have a verb that's kind of the same as matter. I think it just doesn't quite have the same zip to it. It has to, it's a slogan. It's something that people are going to be chanting. It's something that people are going to be repeating. You want it to just to be catchy, and to be concise and to just kind of be there. So I think that's probably why they went with the adjective taisetsu, which is very commonly used in Japanese sayings and slogans and stuff. And it means important or precious, as I said earlier. So literally, kokujin no inochi, particle, we'll get back to that particle later, taisetsu da, black people's lives are important. Now, the particle mo means also or to. So if I were to say kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu or kokujin no inochi ga taisetsu, I'm simply saying black lives are important. And wa and ga, there's slightly different nuances there, which we're going to get to later, but mo means also. So black lives also matter. Black lives matter too. So we're showing there with particle mo, well, there are other things that matter. There are other lives that matter, but black lives also matter. They matter too. We are pointing out that, hey, these lives also matter. So that is what kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu da means, and that was sort of like the initial translation of the slogan in HuffPost Japan. So I'm going back to the Wikipedia article. The translation was fixed and amended to kokujin no inochi wo mamore. Okay, so that's one of the slogans it was amended to. Kokujin no inochi, black lives. Particle wo means that black lives are now the object of our sentence. They're going to have a verb being done to them. But anyway, this verb is mamore, which is the imperative form of mamoru, which is to protect or to save or to preserve, to take care of. So it's commanding, kokujin no inochi o mamore, protect black lives. That's how they translated it. That's one of the translations. Another translation was kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu da. So that's part of it. Now there's a part B, keishi suru na. So keishi suru means a few things. It can simply mean to neglect, like to deprecate, to kind of speak ill of them in a way, to belittle. So the verb keishi suru by itself is like neglect or deprecate or whatever. But if you add the na after that, that's turning it into a commanding form of the opposite. So don't neglect them, don't belittle them. So kokujin no inochi mo taisetsu da, black lives matter too. Don't neglect them. Don't be mean to them. Don't say bad things about them. And then the third translation that they provided here was kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu, with a desu or a da at the end of it, depending on how polite you want to make it. So they're using particle wa here. So I did briefly touch upon earlier kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu, kokujin no inochi ga taisetsu, and how it differs from mo. So kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu, particle wa is that as for particle. It is the topic marker, very similar to particle ga. But it can have this slight, so replace it with as for, basically in English. As for black lives, they matter. So what that does is it kind of opens it up to, well, as for black lives, they matter, but Asian lives don't matter, but white lives don't matter. And you see that in the discourse on the English-speaking side, where, the all lives matter advocates will say, oh, black lives matter, that's saying that white lives don't matter and that Asian lives don't matter. That is a logical fallacy, by the way, but the implication can still kind of be there, especially if you're using particle wa. And you're just kind of making a generic statement in that case. Black lives matter, black lives are important, but there's not that much nuance to it. Meanwhile, kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu da was still not accepted as the official Japanese translation. Some suggested that the slogan be phrased in negative form, with translations like kokujin no inochi wo karonjiru na. So we have another one of this verb, dictionary form verb, followed by na. So basically, don't do this verb. So kokujin no inochi wo, so black lives, karonjiru. So if you compare karonjiru to keishi suru, you might note that the first kanji in both of those words is the same. So they do have a similar meaning. Karonjiru is like to neglect, to make light of, to belittle, that general neighborhood of meaning. So Black Lives Matter and kokujin no inochi wa mo ga taisetsu, those are more affirmative slogans like, hey, Black Lives Matter, let's all be nice to black people. Whereas
kokuji no inochi o keishi suru na or karonjiru na, that's in a negative form. It's like, don't do these negative things to black people. The other ones are do these positive things to black people. The other one is like, well, I think we should phrase it, don't do negative things to black people because negative things are being done to black people. So let's make the slogan, don't do negative things to black people. Back to the Wikipedia article. Among other translations were, kokujin no inochi ni mo kachi ga aru. All right, this one. So kachi ga aru means has value. Kachi is like a value, and then ga aru means like it exists. So kachi ga aru, has value. What has value? Kokuji no inochi, black lives. Now this ni mo thing, so again, that mo is making it black lives also have value to them. Not just white lives, not just Asian lives, not just Indigenous lives, but black lives also deserve to exist. So also from the Wikipedia article, among other translations, were a Japanese translation from John Boyega's coined Black Lives Always Matter, and these are the translations of Black Lives Always Matter. Kokujin no inochi wa itsu datte mondai da. So mondai, usually it means like a problem, but it doesn't always have to be like a negative problem per se. It's like an issue, and I think issue is kind of the nuance that we're getting at here. Black lives are always an issue, as in they should always be something that we're looking at, something that we're fighting for, something that we're talking about. Itsu datte means always. And then another possible translation of Black Lives Always Matter is itsu datte kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu da. So it's just kind of a rewording of it. They're starting with always black lives are important versus black lives always are an issue. They're just saying always black lives are important. In spite of all of this, some people assert that if you translate it literally, the phrase would be kokujin no inochi ga taisetsu or kokujin no inochi wa taisetsu. As I said earlier in this video, yeah, that would be a more, I mean, not even entirely literal translation, because again, they're replacing this verb matter with an adjective, taisetsu. It means basically the same thing, but you're structuring your sentence differently. But I digress. Anyway, the article says, however, if you look at the context of the current movement, black activists have a kokujin no inochi koso taisetsu nuance to it. So this koso. I do like this translation of the slogan. I think that's a good translation. So koso means like the very thing that, or just the thing. So kokujin no inochi koso would be like black lives are just the thing that, or black lives are the very thing that is important. Taisetsu da. But it means, it's so much more than just like is the very thing that. Like if I had a sentence like, kimi ga iru kara koso, boku ga ganbareru yo. That means like, it is because you are in my life that I can persevere. It's sort of like because with a because stress to it. That's kind of what koso is.
So 2023, Sarah speaking, and I have since discovered a new, better way to explain what koso means. It basically emphasizes the word that comes directly before it. So kokuji no inochi koso. It's basically just emphasizing Black Lives Matter. Again, it's not saying Black Lives Matter and other lives don't. It's just saying like, we want to bring emphasis to the word Black Lives because that comes before koso.
So some people assert that the slogan is neither mo, nor ga, nor wa, and it should be translated as kokujin no inochi koso taisetsu da. Particles matter, I guess. So I hope that that was illuminating on the Japanese discourse around slogans and, hey, how particles work and why particles matter. Bye!